in distribution rather than food security. Now, of course, like I told you earlier on, our discussion today is going to do with youth unemployment. And if you take a look at the statistics, according to the 2019 census, 38.9% of youth were unemployed. That is little over 5.3 million. That number, understandably, should be higher right now. And some of the issues that young people face that is leading to that particular issue of unemployment is an environmental degradation that points to the fact that they should be partaking in activities such as farming and agriculture, but because the land is not at its best, that is one of the issues. We have voter apathy. They're not voting in leaders who will actually stand up for them. We have the issue of skill sets and aspiration mismatch. They want to do something, but the available education that they have is not feeding into that particular desire. There's also the issue of low employment to population rate. That is, of course, the jobs that have been given to them or made available by government not matching the numbers of young people that are in need, as well as corruption. A lot of young people decry the issue of nepotism. They say you have to know someone to get a certain job. And joining me to dig deeper into this particular conversation is Sami Aina, who is an analyst as well as politician. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And of course, I'll just start off with the issue of agriculture. You are from Western Kenya, so your expertise comes in that aspect. Agriculture is one of the most promising areas that young people can engage in to ensure that they are making a living, but because of environmental degradation and issues such as what you're seeing right there on your screen, where farmers are having a surplus while in other parts they're not even having enough food, that is an area that should be looked into. So speak to us about the available resources that young people have but are not able to utilize.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here to your studios today. But just a quick one, focus on Western Province, about the surplus we have. Western Province for a very long time has been known to be the food basket of Kenya.
Yes.
And interestingly, we hear that people are suffering due to hunger in other areas. I want to commend a group of farmers from Nyandarua the other day who said the government should take the surplus food that they have to the hungry people, in other areas. But I was also equally surprised that the deputy president came out to say that they need money to buy that food. I think, to me, I didn't understand what he meant, but I felt the government is not taking this issue seriously.
So investments should be more on infrastructure and ways of preserving and distributing.
Exactly. We have a distribution problem. And I believe Western, with the surplus harvest, the bumper harvest that we've had, we have surplus food. I was just talking to my father the other day, who told me he's just from harvesting 30 bags per acre of maize in his 10-acre farm. And many people have realized bumper harvest in Western. So I feel if we are able to coordinate the resources we have in Kenya, in Western Kenya, right and well, we will not have people dying out of hunger or starvation in this country. So it's up to the government to come up and make sure it has improved the distribution processes, and key amongst them is logistics. Don't tell us that you need money to buy the food. No. You know, that's an avenue of corruption that is being created.
Explain, dig deeper into that, because on my list here, corruption is one of the major issues that is rendering young people unemployed. So how does corruption come in when it comes to the opportunities that the agricultural sector actually can give to young people?
Exactly. Talking to so many youths, tricks I will tell you, today it's no longer about what you know. It's not what you call it for. It's more about who you know. And if we go that way, the people who will suffer the most are my brothers and sisters from Western Kenya, because we are known to be predominantly in the opposition. And if things continue the way they are, that it's who you know where, you can see from the recent the recent PS, the secretary's appointments, you can see that people were being drawn mostly from one region, and it's because of who they have at the top. We have again, as young people, especially Western Province, make sure that we elect people who will be able to represent us effectively and who understand the troubles and challenges that the youth are undergoing. But if we continue depending on the current crop of leadership in Western Kenya, our people will continue to suffer. And this population is ballooning.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ballooning. It has been ballooned, I think, for a while now. Now, when we talk about Western Kenya, still, it's not just the Western Kenya, what used to be Western Kenya province. You can look at it even to the extent of Uasin Gishu. When it comes to bumper harvest, that is a huge issue, especially with maize. They have really fertile land, but some of them actually leave it to rot because of that issue. So what would you love to see? And also, now that you've mentioned the kind of leadership that we have, it is a democracy that we are in, right? So it means that the people in these regions can actually vote in leaders who have their best interests at heart. Why isn't that happening? Because you can also point a blaming finger at them and say, you are the one that choose these leaders over and over, but they don't bring to the table what needs to be decision. They don't bring to the table decisions that actually favor young people and that ballooning population that you're talking about.
It's true. I heard the president when he was campaigning. One of his agendas was food security.
Yes.
And I expected him, as in his appointment, to have somebody coming from this rich area or food area, whereby we needed somebody in the Ministry of Agriculture who understands and the plight of the people of Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu, the entire Western Kenya region, because farmers, it's true, have been leaving their maize to rot. Because I remember somebody like me, I went to school because my mother and father were farmers, and there was this season where you'd have them, take their maize to cereals board, and it was a profitable venture. But currently, I don't see them do that.
Right.
And this is the reason is the cost of planting, the cost of even fertilizer is higher than even the cost of the price that you'll be paid for your harvest. So others prefer to just plant for their own consumption. Right. That is the challenge.
So what needs to be done? Is this sensitization? What needs to be done for young people to actually vote wisely as opposed to voting for the old guard?
I think now we cannot talk even about voting. I think now the onus is on the president to make sure that he has the right people, the right leadership in terms of agricultural ministry, and allocate more resources to the agricultural ministry, ensure that we have cheaper or subsidized farm inputs, and that's the only way we'll be able to yield better results when it comes to agriculture.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of that, also changing attitudes towards a certain, are we still living in a Kenya where young people look down on a certain ways of making a living, or are mindsets changing towards more of standing up for yourself, as opposed to Serikali's idea, which used to be the song many years ago? Are young people getting smarter right now, or are they, not just in Western, across board, actually?
That's a very good question. And for me, I've always emphasized that our young people need to have a mental shift from the white collar jobs to the blue collar jobs, because the blue collar industry is now a very big pair. Because in terms of these technical skills. And I want to commend the government and encourage it to continue investing more on TVETs, because there is a shortage of these technical jobs. And you don't have to be employed in the office for you to make good money nowadays. Just your skill of being a mechanic, of being an electrician, can earn you a good and decent living.
Right. And it reminds me of what the former regime was doing with the TVET schools. Do you think they achieved what they aimed to do as far as uptake is concerned? And do you think some of these programs need to be pushed further even as the new leadership continues to take form?
True. As to whether they've achieved, I would say to a certain degree, but it's still small. We need to invest more into TVETs. So far, the government has continued to sponsor TVETs. For TVET students, they get free education, which is good. But we need to do more than that. We should not just train, we should also create employment. But other than that, I also want to encourage my fellow young people. You cannot solely rely on employment. There's also something we call self-employment. Once you're qualified, you can go outside there, register your company, and if the president makes it, if the president makes it real, that the young people will be exempted from tax for a certain period of time, then I think, yes, we'll have a thriving country and economy. Because one of the challenges we are facing as young people is over-regulation.
Right.
We have the regulatory authority hasn't been friendly to the job creators.
Right. Now, every time we have this conversation, it seems like it just boils down to the kind of leadership that we have and the goodwill they have towards the young people. Now, the current government campaigned largely on the premise of making change, for young people, particularly border riders. Most of these people are very young. Even the mama mbogas nowadays have a new face. They're really young ladies out there trying to make a living. Now, do you think there's sufficient representation when it comes to that, so that the people actually who are in government and running things actually feel where the shoe pinches, so that they can actually push for change that is favorable to young people?
As to the mambogas, I wouldn't say there's sufficient representation. But as to the youth, I would say, especially in Nairobi County, we have a young governor and a young senator. That is good representation. But going back to my area where I come from, Kakamega County, again, mental shift,
touch and go,
because there is a problem. We have a conglomerate of old politicians who decide who will be the MCA, MP, all the way to the governor. And that's why we have an old governor and an old senator, no room for the youth. If you are a young person trying to come up, they gang up against you. It's a challenge. So we need a mental shift again on that in Western Province. The voters need to take charge, and we need to start believing in the potential of young people. I like what Rift Valley has done, and other parts like Eastern and even Nairobi. They've given us young governors. The same should also be replicated in Western Province.
But far from the elective positions, just even with, let's look at the position that needs more expertise, the technocrats. Do you think that we're having a young face to this new leadership?
The other day I was looking at Governor Sakaja's appointments, and I was able to see he appointed one young man I know very well called Brian Mulama. I think Sakaja has tried to have technocrats around him who reflect the young and also understand the plight of the young. I would only talk of Sakaja. For other areas, we still have a problem. But again, also the national government, where we needed CSs and PSs who understand the true plight. I would say the young people, also sports is a big employer.
Absolutely, and we're going to get into that shortly, because there's a lot of sporting potential in the country, but not really reflecting entirely when it comes to those who are representing us and outside the country. And we're going to take a look at some of the promises that were made and how we can expect that to change in favor of young people. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we continue on with Sami Aina on youth unemployment in the country.